everyone, it's Keeley here for Soy and Shea and DIY Body Care, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video where we're going to go and make a batch of night cream which will be going out to my Formula Experience subscribers on the DIY Body Care website. Now I do actually have night cream within the Soy and Shea range, and I have plenty of that sitting on the shelf at the moment ready for shop orders and online orders. But as I said, this particular batch is being made for my Formula Experience subscribers because this is the April recipe that is available now on the DIY Body Care website. Now my night cream does have a little bit of a story that goes with it. I have been making it for years, but last year I had to reformulate it. The cream was initially inspired by my dad. Both my parents had gone for a trip down to Victoria, and when they came back, he bought me this beautiful bag of lavender buds from a farm that they had visited, and it just smelled beautiful. He knew I was already using lavender buds in various products, but this bag of lavender, it just smelled like you were walking through a field of lavender plants, unlike the stuff that you'd get from our suppliers, which have generally already lost their beautiful aroma. So I really wanted to do something special with these lavender buds, and I wanted to try and incorporate them into a cream, and specifically a night cream. So my way of doing that was to pop these lavender buds into a little cotton drawstring bag, and then I popped them into the water phase, and I allowed the lavender to steep through that water while it was heating up. And the end result, it might not bring through a lot of botanical goodness because dried buds don't often have those botanical goodnesses left in them, but it did bring this really complex, deep aroma into the end product, and I absolutely loved it. Now, because I wanted to make this cream super special, I went all out and I used all these luxury oils and butters and botanical extracts, and it was one of my most luxurious creams on the shelf, and therefore my most expensive. When I first launched it, it was at a reasonable price and lots of people were able to purchase it. But as we all know, the cost of everything over the years has just been going up and up and up. And as I had to adjust the price of this night cream, the demand of it went down, and I knew that it was no longer sustainable to actually make, so I reluctantly retired it. And if you are a maker, you know that the minute you retire a product from your range because it has not been selling, suddenly everybody wants that one product that is no longer available. And I was getting so many requests for this night cream to come back, but I just couldn't make it the same way because of all these luxury ingredients. The cost of shea butter recently has just skyrocketed, so I really had to think about what I was going to do for it. I did end up taking quite a few of those sort of luxury oils and the botanicals out of the cream, but while I was looking, I stumbled across CoEnzyme Q10, which is an active. It's an antioxidant, and it is proven to actually help regenerate skin cell growth, which then leads to a better elasticity of the skin, reduces fine lines. It does so much more than what all the oils and botanicals were doing in the product, that when I took them out and put the CoEnzyme Q10 into it, the cream actually became better. It really, really did become better, and because it's an active, it was actively doing what I wanted this cream to do overnight. So I am super happy with the reformulated version of the night cream, and those who used to love my original formula and have now tried the new formula have also said that they do prefer this new formula. When I actually announced the reformulation relaunch of the night cream, I had lots of my patron members ask me if I could share the recipe for that night cream, and I said it was coming, and April is the month that it is now launched over on the DIY Body Care website. So if you are a creator and you're interested in this formula, the formula is now available on the DIY Body Care website to purchase. And as I do with all of my recipes, when it comes comes to the oils that are added into this. I do give suggestions for alternatives as well. So depending upon people's budgets or what they have access to, I do have alternatives listed in there. And if you do have the budget to do so, I have put in some of those more luxurious oils that you can also include into the formula. But for now, we are going to go and make the night cream with CoEnzyme Q10 for my formula experience customers. But as I said, this is also available for my retail customers over on the Soy and Shea website. Let's go and see how I make it. All right, so as I said just a moment ago, I do still like to keep that tradition of infusing some lavender buds into my water phase. It is not essential to do this. You can completely skip it, and especially if you are using a scent other than lavender, you may not want to do this. But all I'm going to do is add about 2 to 3 spoonfuls of lavender buds. I've got a little muslin bag here, so I'm just going to pull the drawstring up just to make sure that none of those come out. You could use those little tea bag things. You can get those resealable tea bags. You can even do something like use an organza bag as well, but I'm just going to use that little cotton bag there. And depending upon the batch size is going to depend how much you put in. I haven't really put anything about the measurements of it in the recipe. It's kind of like just eyeball it for the size that you're doing. So what I'm going to do is grab my jar that I'm going to do my water in and pop that straight in there. So if you're not doing the lavender, don't worry about this step. Next thing we're going to add in is our distilled water, and I'm just going to pour that over the top of the bag. I do actually like to put the bag in first and then pour my water on it. Method to madness is that if you try and put this into the water afterwards, because the lavender is so light and it doesn't absorb the water, it does tend to float. But if you can get some water on it at the beginning, it will actually eventually kind of sink down and it just steeps better. Next up, I'm going to add in my humectant, which is a little bit of sodium lactate. So we'll add that into there. And that's all we need for our water phase. So let's cover this one up with some biodegradable cling. And I like to put 2 layers on it in case the first layer peels back from as the steam rises and it creates that little balloon. It can sometimes peel off. I put the second layer on it just to make sure that everything is nice and tied down, firmed down, I don't know. It doesn't come up as easily and you get less water loss. That'll do. Let's tear those scales back out. We'll pop that on the top, and I've just got a marker and I'm going to write down what that weight is on there, and I'm going to go and pop this into a water bath. So next up we will do the oil phase, which has got our emulsifying waxes and oils in there. My emulsifying wax, my preferred one to use is CAC20, which is cetearyl alcohol cetereth 20. One of the things when I do actually put this as my emulsifier in recipes, a lot of people do then write to me and say that it's not working, it's not holding. And when I do a little bit of inquiry with them, I discover that they're actually just using cetereth 20 as the emulsifier, which is not a complete emulsifier, so it's not going to hold it all together. You need that blend of cetearyl alcohol and cetereth 20, and the two work together to emulsify. Now, to add a little bit of stability to the emulsifier, you do need a co-emulsifier, and I'm using stearic acid in this today. And the stearic acid will also add a really beautiful thick viscosity to this cream. So we'll add that in there, almost to the amount. We're now going for a light vegetable oil, and within the recipe you can change it up. I do have suggestions in there as to what you can use, but you do want something fairly light. Night creams are actually meant to be very heavy on the skin, but a lot of people actually don't like the heaviness. So I like to add in a light oil as part of the formula so that it still will add a bit of shea butter in, which will add that heaviness, that richness that you want in a night cream. But the light oil just helps it to sit a little bit better on the skin and not feel so heavy and weighed down. And then, as I said, we're also going to add in our shea butter here. Now in the recipe, I actually do list in some different vegetable oils that you can use, not for the shea butter, but in place of the one I just added before. You can add in various different ones, and I've actually said what different oils will actually do. So if you want a really nice light feel, using things like apricot kernel oil, sweet almond oil, camellia oil is also another one you could use. But if you want something to be a little bit more richer, heavier, you can use things like olive oil or avocado oil. So it really is something that you can tweak this recipe into then being something of your own and adjust it according to your budget. Now the final thing we're going to add into our oil phase is our natural vitamin E or mixed tocopherol. I've got tocopherol 70%, which means it's 70% active. Going to pop just that little bit more in, and now that we've got those in, I'm going to pop this into my water bath, and I'm going to allow these to come up to a temperature of about 70 to 80 degrees before I mix them together. Okay, we've now come up to temperature on both of our phases here. So I've just pulled my water phase out first, wiping down all of that water that's on the outside that sits in the bain-marie so it doesn't get cross-contaminated when we start pouring into each other. And I'm just going to pop that, tear the scale out first. That will help. Pop that on. I've lost 1 gram, so I'm not really too concerned about 1 gram, because I usually do over pour by 2 or 3 grams when it comes to the water, so that is fine. We're going to take the top off, and you can see that the lavender has turned the water into that tea color, but don't panic about that. It doesn't harm the cream, doesn't generally come through in the cream either. But what I'm now going to do is take my tea bag out and just wring the water out of it. Now when I actually do weigh my water, because I know that I'm going to lose some of my water in my tea bag, generally I do actually pour in an extra 20 grams of water to make sure that I've got enough for when we get to the end sort of processes, and I've got enough to pot up in my jars. Now for most of you, using a spoon and a spatula is the best way to do that. I don't have much sensitivity to heat, so I'm just going to wring that out with my hands, but don't attempt to do that at home if you are sensitive to hot things, because it will burn. But I don't feel it. Where there's no sense, as they say. Anyhow, we've got all of that water out of there. Let me grab my oils. And again, I am going to wipe down the sides of the jar just to pull off. As it's boiling in the bain-marie, condensation starts building up on the sides of the jar, and when you're actually pouring one jar into the other, you don't want any droplets falling in to your oils or waters, whichever way you are pouring it. Now I have actually put my water into the smaller one just to make it easier to clean up, so I'm going to pour my water into my oil. You can see that the cream has taken on a bit of a beigey sort of look. It's not particularly terrible. When I did first start making this cream, I was really concerned about that color, and as you will see later on when we get to the cool down phase, I actually do put mica into my night cream because of that color. And even though I'm not bothered by it anymore, it just feels wrong to make this night cream without a little bit of mica, but that will come later. Let's get this mixed. I'm going to give it about a, I don't know, 30 to 40 second pulse with the stick blender, let it settle for a moment, and then I'll give it another 30 to 40 second blend with the stick blender. Alright, so I've given that a good mix, and you will notice that once you actually start to really bring that emulsion together, that brownish tinge or that creamish tinge really does disappear. And by the time this does get into that sort of cooler down phase, it does come back to a nice white sort of colour. So you don't have to add the mica, which we will be doing later. But anyhow, we've got that mixed in. Because this is still warm and is still evaporating and we're losing water out of it. I am going to cover this up with some cling film again. I'll leave it sit here for about 5 minutes, and then I will come back and I will pulse it again just to make sure that it's staying nice and stable. Depending upon the size batch that you make will depend how many times you have to mix this. If you're only making a small test batch of 100 grams, you may only actually need to blend that first time, and it will hold together beautifully as it's cooling down. But sometimes the larger the batch that you make, the more often you have to give it those stick blends in between. So I'll leave this sit here for about 5 minutes. I'll come back and give it another stick blend, cover it back up, and then I'll just monitor it. If I feel that it needs to have another stick blend, I will do that as it's cooling down, and there'll become a point where you actually know that this is nice and emulsified, stable, and you don't need to do any more of that stick blending. So usually I find most of my larger batches, I just need that 2 lots of stick blending, and then it holds beautifully. So I'm going to go and do something while I let this settle for a bit. All right, let's see how this is ticking along. It is looking like it is firming up beautifully here. Let's grab the thermometer from up here and give it a quick little test. I am down to 35 degrees Celsius. So we're at that perfect temperature to start adding in our cool down ingredients. And you can see it's not a brown color. It does have a slightly off cream color to it. So at this point, if you are happy with the color of this cream, you can skip coloring it. But I think because I have colored my night cream for so long, it just doesn't look right to me not to have that purple mica in here. Let's get all that back into our cream. This is thickened up so beautifully, and that's what you really want with a night cream, is to have that nice thickness. I'm going to put a little bit of purple mica into this one. So let's just grab a little bit. I'm just going to sit it on the top where I can then pour some oil over it, which will help to disperse that a little bit easier through here. Now I know I'm putting lots, it looks like I'm putting lots in, but I'm only actually putting a little bit at a time. You don't want to put too much in here, because unlike when you put it into soap and you've got the water and the oils and stuff to help wash it away, with this you're actually rubbing it onto the skin. So you don't want to make your moisturizer too dark in color, because it can come through. Just trying to grab my essential oil from the top here. It can come through and start staining the skin. Now with this formula, you can put either fragrance oil or essential oil in it. I'm putting a custom blend into mine here. It's not one that I have shared on the recipe this time. Usually I do share what the essential oil blends are that go into my formulas if I am using them. But this one is a custom blend that I made up quite some time ago. It is using a base from somewhere else and then popping a few of my own oils in here to make this custom blend. I call it Lavender Dreams, and it is super popular in my range. So I kind of keep this one a little bit to myself. Next thing we're going to add in is the CoEnzyme Q10. And look at the color of that. So don't be shocked the first time you pour it out, because I know I definitely was. It's got this sort of orange tinge to it, and it really is quite nice. It can put a slight orange tinge in your products depending how much you're using, but in this one it actually doesn't. So I still keep that mica in there. And finally, I'm going to add in my water-soluble preservative. And then I'm going to mix this through with the stick blender. And the benefit of actually having mica in it at this point is that you can actually double check how well this has been mixed by seeing how far that mica has actually mixed through your cream. You'll be surprised at how much mixing you do actually need to do with your creams to get your fragrance dispersed through it evenly. And this mica will actually show that. Probably going to be very, very difficult to see. I think you can actually see it, but sometimes you might think, well, I've mixed that for a bit, it looks like it's mixed through, but you can actually see all the streaks of white where the mica hasn't yet gone through it, which means that this isn't yet fully incorporated throughout the whole mix. Alright, so I don't have any white streaks through this now. It's looking really nice. It's got just that real pale lilac colour, pale lavender colour to it. And it's smelling really good. I really do like the blend of oils that I put into this particular one. But as I said, you can put any essential oils you want in, or you can use fragrance oils in this one as well. But just keep in mind, if you are going to do that infusion of the lavender buds like I've done, it does impart that sort of depth of the lavender into it. So you want to try and keep something that's going to complement it. I didn't realize just how much the lavender was adding to it until one day I actually forgot to put the lavender into it while I was making it, and I noticed a real difference in the scent at the end. All right, now that I've got the stick blender all cleaned off, just going to wipe all of that excess down into the bottom of the jar here, just to make sure everything is well incorporated into that mix. This is still, for me, way too warm to pot up. If you follow along with me on most of my recipes, I do wait until this is at room temperature before potting it up, so we don't end up with condensation in our products, which can then lead to problems later on, even if you do have a preservative, because your preservative is not instantaneous when it goes into products. It does take a little bit of time for them to become active. So if you start introducing things like condensation into your products, it doesn't give the preservative that fighting chance to protect them. So I'm going to leave this covered up so we don't lose any moisture while it's cooling. And then when it has cooled down, we will come back and we'll pot this one up. All right, it is the next day and we are ready to start potting up our night cream. It is looking and smelling absolutely delicious. Wouldn't recommend eating it, but it really does look so nice. It's so lovely and thick, which is what you really do want out of a night cream. They do say that night creams should actually feel quite heavy on the skin, but I don't find that that is necessarily accurate. I think if they feel too heavy on the skin, they just don't have a very nice feel. Personally, I'm not someone who likes a heavy cream or balm on my skin, which is why I always try to make sure that they are non-greasy. But this one still has that really thick, luscious feeling without the skin feeling super heavy, because especially in summer in here in Australia, you don't want anything too heavy on your skin during the night, because we get some rather hot, humid nights here sometimes. But I'm going to get some of this scooped into my piping bag here. This is actually thick enough that you could technically spoon it into the containers, but I do still find it nicer to pipe it in. I might be able to get all of this in here. Let's see. I don't want to get the bag too full because I can never then actually control it. It's better to always fill the bag up a couple of times and not accidentally squeeze stuff all over the place. Yeah, I think my bag's fairly full there. So I'm just going to grab my scissors and we're going to cut the tip off here, and then we're going to start filling our jars. And because this is such a thick cream, I do recommend using jars. If you can put it into a pump bottle, but because the cream is so thick, there could be potential for it to clog the mechanism over time. So I do highly recommend this one going into a jar. You could also pop it into a tube if you've got some tubes as well, but definitely jars work best with this particular formula. So we're going to get all of these filled up. Once I've emptied my bag, I'll put the rest in here, and then we will get on with labeling them. it is now time to label up our jars of night cream. So I'm just going to put a very simple wraparound label across the bottoms of them. Now, I do actually get a lot of questions asked about my labels. Where do I get them printed? What sizes do I use? Where do I buy my paper and all that sort of thing? It's a very difficult question for me to actually answer most of the time, because most of the time people actually don't like the answer that I give them. I do print all of my labels in-house. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I can't remember now, I bought an Epson TM3500 printer. Unfortunately, they don't make that particular model anymore, but they do make other models, and it is purely dedicated to label printing or fan fold printing. So if you do things like tickets and stuff and you fan fold papers, it works off of rolls of paper. So you buy the different varying widths of paper, and that is all it prints on. It doesn't print on A4 sheets or anything like that. It is literally just rolls of paper like this. So that's the sort of labels that I do. So it is a dedicated label printer, and to get me set up on that printer 7 or 8 years ago, I did pay 2,000 Australian dollars for it, and that's why so many people don't like my answer, because the cost of that printer to get it set up is more than your average inkjet or laser printer. But the thing is, that printer is, I can't remember exactly when it was, it's at least 7 years old, if not 8 years old. Before I actually invested in that particular printer, in the sort of, well, I've been in business for 14 years, so let's say 6 or 7 years. In that space of time, I think I'd bought 3 or 4 laser printers because they just couldn't keep up with the amount of work that I was doing. Whereas since I've had that printer, I've not had to replace it. So it has actually, it's a big investment, but it's been a well worth investment for me, and it does allow me to print labels of so many different shapes and sizes, as long as I've got the paper and I can make them the exact sizes that I actually need them to be. So that is a bit about my label printer. As I said, they don't make the C3500 anymore, but they do have other models of it, and honestly, it is probably one of the best investments I have made in terms of technology for my business. But there it is. I now have the night cream all done up. These ones, as I said, are specifically for the Formula Experience subscribers over on the DIY Body Care website. You do need to have an Australian shipping address to be a subscriber on that one, and they will get a pot of this cream sent to them in the mail, as well as have the digital recipe sent to them. For those of you who are not in Australia, or if you are just wanting just the recipe and don't want the product, you can actually just purchase the recipe, as I said, by itself. And if you are a Soy and Shea retail customer, this night cream, as I said, is also available on the website and in store. But I hope you've enjoyed coming along with me today as I made this night cream. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. And until the next video comes out, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you then. Bye.